So there are 435 members of the House, and there always will be because one gets out, another one comes. There are 100 senators, there always will be. One gets out, one comes in. But what I've noticed is what seems to be a proclivity in terms of media interest in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And it seems to have intensified ever since she won her seat. Um, you know, for those of you that don't recall, she beat out Joe Crowley, and it was this big upset to the Democratic establishment and all that. We've been over this 1,000 times. But what I wanted to bring attention to is that I can now name multiple instances that have happened in the past few weeks that have convinced me that there is either some subconscious media obsession with her or possibly a mixture of just stupidity. Um, the first one I want to bring attention to is when we had the mocking of her not being able to afford an apartment in D.C. There was a commentator on Fox who said that this was part of her ploy to shore up her base. Why she would need to lie about her status as a person of not much wealth, given her background as a bartender, is beyond me. But why she would even think that was necessary is referring to this commentator is even more strange. But it was one of those things where you go, okay, well, that's one story. You know, people are going to shore up whatever. And her response to it was to bring up, you guys are mocking me not being able to pay for things. And I let it, just kind of ignored it. It's Fox being Fox. And then they had a story where there was a commentator who took a picture of her backside, or rather, he did not take the picture. His last name is Scary or something to that effect. And in response to this photo, people were saying, how do you have the incentive to even start talking about someone's bag or their backside or their coat or their jacket as some indicator of wealth? So that was one of the stories that kind of pushed me further in this direction of, wait a second, they're not really talking about policy. But, whatever. Yeah, Dirk, we're talking about your girlfriend. Then you go over to the Laura Ingraham show. I forgot what its name, the Ingraham Angle or some trash. But she takes four policy ideas and she puts them up on the screen. She goes, these are all of the new democratic female policies, or the new wave of lawmakers that are coming in this upcoming 116th session of Congress. And she it had the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, free college for all, and there's another one that was on there. But I like how Ocasio Cortez's response was to say, "Yeah, you guys caught me trying to save the planet and give people things that are actually going to benefit their lives." Yeah, they were. Yeah, Dirk, how you doing, Ruben? But I think this is really weird. I actually have a clip from everybody's new favorite Supreme Court Justice, Kavanaugh, to illustrate how I feel about this.
All nonsense.
Yeah, so that's exactly how what I think. So let's ask our new Supreme Court Justice. What do you think of Fox's decision to talk about everything that isn't a policy, and when they do talk about a series of policies, it's only for a few moments?
All nonsense.
I knew from the moment I heard that during his testimony, I was going to use that for something. Oh my god, my only regret is I wasn't able to cut off that little part at the end of him saying reported by whoever. Talking about his forceful testimony. But why do you think that is, that they now have this weird obsession with her? Because I remember 2 years ago, back when that election season was going on, it was always Trump this, Obama this, Hillary this, Bernie this. And it always made sense to me because these were people who were nationally known figures running for president in most instances, or they were the president themselves. And you had some stuff about Pelosi and Schumer, and then a little bit of McConnell. And now it just seems like it's literally just Trump, her, and Pence that they talk about. A little bit of Bernie, a little bit of Warren, but just for whatever reason, and she's not been in office yet. She won a primary, and then it's just interview after interview after interview. Fox News is horrified at the idea of an actual genuine candidate being in office. Well, that's been the I'm not saying this to dismiss her at all, but we've had a legitimate candidate in office for a few decades. His name was Bernie, and it was really weird to see them not say anything about him, to my knowledge, prior to him running for president. So it's this thing where they don't want to accept the idea, in my opinion, that those positions that she has are important, or rather that are popular among people. And they want to keep framing this narrative. That's an insane person. Look how dumb she's. Because I remember there was a story that they made out of a video she posted on her Twitter account where it was her going up to a group of kids and saying, "We're going to fight Trump." And then they had like a little panel talk about it. And I was weirded out because I said to myself, wait a second. You have lawmakers introducing policies. A lot of them suck, admittedly. But you have people who are actually in office and are doing things. And all you can do is keep talking about this one candidate over and over again. Hell, I don't even think they covered the Yemen resolution, the one that the Republicans blocked earlier this week. I don't even think that was covered by Fox. I could be wrong though, but I don't think I am. So it's a really strange thing. Hell, they don't even talk about Rokana. Like I have never seen him talked about on Fox, and he is theoretically a test run of what she's going to be. He's been stepping it up. That's the only politician in my state, and I've said this multiple times, that is currently in office that I respect at all. I would like to apologize to the U.S. on behalf of California for everything my politicians did, whether that's Kevin McCarthy or Pelosi or Feinstein or any of the other ones. They're just trash. I think back, it's him and Barbara Lee. They're the only good ones. But notice they get no coverage, but they've been in office for now a series of years. Fox News pro-Muslim now after the Khashoggi murder. Oh yeah, they love the Saudis now. They're gonna pretend like. Oh wait, I think did I misread that comment? Were you saying that they were trying to downplay his death, or that they were now in favor of the Saudis? I'm trying to make sure I know what you're talking about, Ruben, so I don't misquote you or misstate your position. Oh, yeah. They've completely shifted to just being a network where if they're not talking about Trump, they're whining about the Democrats, and they're taking clips of her and making it out to be some huge story. Like I have never been this. If I were her, and people like to talk about so like how she made the statement about Shapiro was catcalling her. I'd be very creeped out because what we have now is a network that has been around for decades and is covering in proclivity a candidate who hasn't even arrived in office yet, that's been famous for a few months, over, like I said before, 435 members of the House and 100 senators. And they get no coverage at all. Well, or if they do, it's minimal. I mean, when was the last time you heard Fox talk about Rubio or Rand Paul or just any of the senators? Except maybe Bernie and, Warren, just to mock them. But isn't that so weird? Not pro-Muslim, pro-Saudi Arabia. Well, yeah, Dirk, the two countries that have impunity when it comes to criticism from the U.S., as we've been over this before, are Saudi Arabia and Israel. They can do whatever they want. They can have whatever positions they want. And we're just forced to kind of sit here and accept that the politicians at the top are going to react with such fervor and hatred for anyone who simply states, hey, they're not as cracked up as they want you to believe. It's this foreign nebulous concept because they've been brought up to think, oh, if you are opposed to the Israeli government, you hate Jews, which is not true, as we've stated before on here, that it's there's a difference between a government and its people. I don't like the U.S. government, but I like the people. It's really funny. A lot of times when we get these crappy election results, like how you had Cruz just barely win out over O'Rourke, I always say, oh man, the people over there don't know what they're doing. But then you think to yourself, wait a second, he just barely won. So there's a lot of smart people in Texas. They just never felt motivated to vote before. Wow. Like it's just this thing where the more I think about it, the less critical I am of people, even when they vote against the way I would have preferred for them to vote. It's a little dichotomy I noticed. I wonder what Fox will say about once they get more coverage. I don't think they will talk about, and I want to make sure I know to pronounce her first name, Ilhan. I know the last name is Omar, but I've had trouble with her name for a while now. Um, I don't think they're going to talk about those two because if you look at the way they covered Keith Ellison, how many times was he talked about prior to his running for DNC chair? Now, they brought up the Farrakhan connection, and that was kind of discussed a little bit during that time. But how much did they really discuss him? He was in the House for 10 years, and up until he became DNC deputy chair and that race before that, they barely ever covered him. Maybe not even at all. Hell, they have more coverage on Ocasio-Cortez than the party leadership for either side. I see maybe one story about McConnell every month or so that is actually based around something that he's doing versus just the Republican leadership will vote on this today. So it's just this thing where it's really weird. All these members of Congress that barely ever get discussed are getting outranked and outclassed by someone that won a one election. And I'm not saying her victory was insignificant, but the idea that they're now going to, like, when you have to go and think about this. Imagine if I were, let's say, in that, like, I was just a YouTube commentator and then I win an election. And then as I am transitioning from winning the primary to now trying to prepare for the general, and I put out like a little 2-3 minute video where I talk about the news for a few moments. They start covering that. They're like, well, Justin said today that he doesn't agree with this particular thing, and then they just sit there and talk about it for like 10 or 20 minutes. This itty bitty clip, this little small window of time, they just decide to blow up into something huge. Let's see. According to one of my friends from more native Texans, then oh yeah, I saw that same story, Ruben. More people who were from there voted for O'Rourke, but I made a mistake. My comparison wasn't that good. I'm going to admit to it. I should have said if I were to go and make, let's say, movie reviews, things that don't have to do with policy, and they just start taking those and going, so why does he feel this way about this film? And when you start getting stories like the one that we had about that guy that took that picture of her backside and was talking about this girl does not appear to be whatever, that's when you start realizing, yeah, they're just trying to grasp at straws in terms of covering her. Or should I have our new associate justice reiterate?
All nonsense.
He's gonna be the punchline for the rest of the stream. I'm gonna keep trying to invent ways to for reasons to play that again. Oh my god. Next year is gonna be so weird. I mean, we're gonna have these progressives, and that's kind of the scary part about that election cycle for the presidency. I was trying to make an edited video explaining why that primary is going to be rigged, but I've had trouble with this computer where it'll go on the loading screen and it'll just shut off. So that might hopefully come out. That delays it, but whatever. What I worry about is that they're going to do this same kind of looking for any little thing to report about when it comes to those presidential candidates. So Ocasio-Cortez, when she finally gets in office with these other progressives, when they start actually doing things that are, we would consider beneficial, they won't get covered because Fox is trying to sit there and go, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and they just completely cut them off. And that, I don't think that's a necessarily pessimistic way of looking at it, because think about it. From 2015 to 2016, what legislation other than maybe the Iran deal can you think of that was talked about widely? Just things that were in Congress at that point that were discussed over and over again or otherwise given significant coverage. I can't think of anything. And that's a really scary thought because it means that we're now going to have a very, in my opinion, better Congress than we've had in years. And it's just going to be the people. I wasn't here. Well, you get what I'm saying, Ruben. Like I'm kind of like for as weird as these stories are now, when it finally comes time for her to get covered appropriately, and have these various stories made of what actual laws she's proposing or what things she's participating in legislatively, they're going to not cover her because they're going to be too caught up with this presidential election. So am I making a little bit more sense now, or do you get what I'm trying to convey? That if you go and look back at the most recent presidential election, the year before it, 2015, and the year after it, or the year during it, where all the voting took place, what legislation and what thing in Congress can you remember taking place and getting actual coverage? Like last year, for example, we had the Obamacare repeal. We had the a little bit of stuff on DACA, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because that's when Sessions announced we were rescinding that. But you get my point. We can name policies that were done during last year because there was no election going on, so that was pretty much all that was being discussed. This year, for as bad as it was, we had the caravan, which noticeably, now that the election is over, Trump doesn't want to talk about. Oh yeah, Ruben, that was the restoration of relations with Cuba, which, by the way, is one of three things I give him credit for. So I have a lot of people who just say I hate him for no reason, and not accurate. I've given him credit for that because it should have been done a long time ago. But my point to you is when you have actual important things happening that relate to her, I'm going to want this kind of coverage because it's actual stuff that matters. But when they're sitting here and they're playing these little stupid videos about, oh, look, she's wearing this, she can't afford this, that kind of coverage might disappear because of this presidential election. When that happens, it's dangerous because it means Congress goes back to being the invisible branch of government. We just hear about the president and then the presidential candidates, and that's it. So it's a mixed bag to see Fox obsessed with her. If they could be obsessed with her where they introduce people to particular policies, which could happen if they keep up this attention next year, when it actually matters, that might be one thing. But if it's just going to be stories like this, who benefits? Like, all it does is have the people who already don't like her, as I read from you in those comment sections a few weeks ago or months ago, get their confirmation bias. So, thank you for watching. Have a good day.